So the Huawei P30 Lite was launched shortly after its more premium siblings, the P30 and the P30 Pro, but as usual for a light model, most of the best bits of those flagship phones were stripped out in order to achieve that lower asking price. Of course, since the P30 family was unveiled, Huawei has had a bit of a shitty year. The US has basically banned any native companies from doing any business with Huawei without express permission. The resolution is still uncertain, and that means the likes of Android updates may be severely impacted on the P30 Lite going forwards. And as if that wasn't enough pause for thought, the P30 Lite also now has really stiff competition in the form of Google's Pixel 3a, which costs basically the same on contract. So should you even be considering the P30 Lite right now? Well, I've been using it as my full-time personal handset for over a week now, and here is my in-depth review. And for more on the latest and greatest mobile tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that there notifications bell. Cheers! Now the P30 Lite looks very similar to the standard P30, with some identical elements such as that camera placement and the rear branding, but the finish isn't quite as refined as you would kind of expect from a budget model. Still, you do get a gorgeous display that fills almost the full of that front panel, as well as curved edges and corners for a comfortable grip. My review version is of course the boring black model, but you can pick it up in the considerably more colourful gradient style finish instead, which Huawei is pretty much renowned for these days. And here on the light model you also get a physical fingerprint sensor stuck away on the back, which is perfectly positioned to quickly and effortlessly unlock the phone. However, even for a glass phone, the P30 Lite is more slippy than a well-lubricated frog sat on an ice rink covered in baby oil listening to Bone Slippy by Underworld. Stick this thing on any smooth surface, even one that appears to be completely flat, and you can basically watch the wee bugger seemingly hover its way millimetre by painful millimetre to the very edge, until finally, boom! And that is how I know the P30 Lite is actually pretty durable, because this thing has endured endless tumbles, and so far, touch wood, they haven't taken their toll. Unfortunately, the P30 Lite isn't in any way, shape or form water resistant, however, although it does seem to be absolutely fine. A little bit of rain, the odd little splash, as long as you dry it off pretty pronto. That 6.15-inch IPS display is powerfully bright and pleasantly punchy as well, working well even when you're wearing sunglasses or whatnot. I definitely enjoyed kicking back with some shows on the go, although Netflix hasn't certified the Lite for HD playback, so streaming video looks a bit grainy and definitely does not take advantage of that full HD plus resolution. And as usual, you can have a bit of a play around with the colour output, and you do get the full eye comfort mode, so it's nice and easy on the old peepers at night time. And sure, the P30 Lite's IPS panel isn't quite as gorgeous as the Pixel 3a's beautiful OLED display, but to be fair, around the £300 price point, you definitely cannot complain. As for the audio, well, splendid news, because the P30 Lite does have a headphone jack, hooray! And you also get Bluetooth 4.2 and aptX HD support as well for any wireless phones. And if you find yourself in particularly dire straits without any headphones to hand, well, there is the single mono speaker here on the P30 Lite's bottom edge, but as you'd expect, it ain't great. Certainly bloody loud, but it ain't great. Now speaking of Bluetooth, we need to talk about the software on this thing. You get Android Pie on board with Huawei's EMUI 9.0 slapped on top, so it's not quite as up to date as the standard P30. However, you still get most of the same great EMUI features here on the Lite model, including the one-handed mode, gesture navigation, all of that stuff. But the software on this handset does seem to be a lot more shonky than on the premium models. So for instance, on more than one occasion, it's completely forgotten any previous devices I connected to using Bluetooth, and it also likes to reset other bits as well. So for instance, I installed Gboard on it, set that all up, and then it just reverted back to SwiftKey for the hell of it. And for some weird reason, Google Calendar just completely refused to connect to any of my Google accounts up until today, of course, when I'm shooting this video, when it's now magically working. So seriously, is this the beginning of the Huawei Google feud? Because here on the P30 Lite, they seem to get on about as well as Katie Hopkins and any other human being on the planet. And of course, shonkiness aside, the whole Google-Huawei relationship, the future of that is uncertain, so who knows, the Play Store access may be revoked at some point, updates, that's all uncertain as well. Is that something you're willing to risk on a smartphone that you might want to use for the next 2, 3, however many years? As for the performance, it's the old Kirin 710 chipset buried away in here, backed by 4 gigs of RAM. This proves fine for everyday use, although you will see the occasional wee judder as you're swapping apps or what have you. Most Android games run at a perfectly respectable frame rate, and yes, there is a bit of GPU Turbo 2 support as well for your likes of your PUBG sessions. However, while more premium Huawei handsets boast fantastic battery life, the P30 Lite's 3340 mAh cell isn't quite as impressive. I felt that I just about made it through each day when using the phone to stream media, check messages, and occasionally snap some photos. And if I tried anything more intensive, like using the phone as a sat-nav, I had to plug it into charge well before finally stumbling into bed. Unfortunately, the P30 Lite lacks the supercharged tech of the more premium P30 handsets, which is a real shame because I love saying supercharge in that stupid voice. And also it means the P30 Lite takes a lot longer to fill back up. But hey, at least you do get a nice bit of Type-C USB action instead of that god-awful micro USB nonsense. Now, Huawei has made a big deal over the triple lens camera setup on the P30 handsets, but don't get too excited here. You don't get a telephoto option on the Lite model, which at this price would be a bit of a marvel. Instead, you get a 48 megapixel primary lens with an f1.8 aperture, backed by an 8 megapixel ultra-wide shooter and a basic 2 megapixel depth sensor. Photo quality is still decent for the price, with Huawei's AI mode on board to capture punchy hues and respectable HDR shots. In high contrast, you'll find the darker elements are quite murky, but the Pixel 3a is the only recent rival to offer a significant improvement over these results. And even though this is the Lite model, you still get the full range of features here, including the obligatory portrait mode for adding a bokeh-style blur into the background. Just stay clear of the weird-ass studio lighting, which still doesn't work at all. And when things get a bit dim, then night mode once again helps out to brighten things up a bit. As for the video, you can only shoot up to full HD resolution footage here on the Lite. There is no 4K support, sadly. The P30 Lite is fine for shooting home movies though, with reliable audio pickup. Just don't expect the moon on a stick. What it all comes down to is the Huawei P30 Lite is basically beaten in pretty much every area by Google's Pixel 3a smartphone, which costs more or less the same SIM-free and basically the same on contract. You get a better display, a more capable camera, which is also a lot more user-friendly as well, and of course the peace of mind, the fact that you know you're going to get Android OS updates and security patches for the foreseeable, something that the Huawei P30 Lite sadly can no longer boast. But of course that's just what I think. Definitely let us know your own thoughts down below on the P30 Lite. Have you actually got it? Have you been using it as well? And what do you reckon? Have you been seeing all these weird little software quirks that I have? Because goddamn, they are pretty annoying. And please do, for more on the latest greatest mobile tech, poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers everyone, love you!